Hello, everybody. I'm now live for the very second episode of the Full Disclosure Network's podcast, as we are pre-launch, soon to be by the time of our 2025 conference, the Full Disclosure Now conference this July in Florida, again at St. Pete Beach, building off the wonderful and successful event we did last year. This week, for the second episode, I'm joined today with Michael Feeley. I have the pleasure of being Facebook friends with him, but have not gotten to really speak with him yet face to face. And I know he has a lot of amazing content to share with us. In particular, we're following up with the interview I did with Trevor Grassi last week, who is personal friends with the CAFA Research Project team, the four Italians, including Filippo Biondi and Armando May. Mr. Biondi in particular is the one pioneering the synthetic aperture radar scanning techniques used to find what's not only beneath the pyramids of the Giza Plateau, but also underneath the Sphinx. But that seems to be yet another big reveal that the team is saving. So with that, I'm going to bring Michael Feeley on. Hi, Michael. Thank you for having us, for joining us today and, being on my show. And we have Michael coming from the UK, so if his connection is spotty and we have some technical difficulties, we might restream this cast if they're that bad. And there's no pressure, because that's the great thing about getting a network off early on. If you have some rough kinks and stuff, you can always, figure it out now. Can you hear me, Michael? Are you frozen? Uh-oh. We might have technical difficulties, so we might possibly be revisiting the stream. And let's see. In the meantime, I'll just kind of talk for a bit as a recap for anyone viewing right now. Last week, Trevor Grassi revealed that the Buseji mountain complex in Romania, as written extensively by Radu Cinemar, has 3 tunnels underneath the secret advanced ET complex in Romania. And it goes all the way, these tunnels, they have 3 of them. One runs all the way to the Giza Plateau, right underneath those pyramids and the Sphinx. And what other people in the community these days and in the past have remote viewed and gone to in their dreams or astral projection or by location as to the halls of Amenti. And the halls of Amenti are known for having the records of not just human civilization since the early days of planet Earth and when we finally got here, but also the histories of other civilizations and races all throughout the known universe. And it's supposed to be amazing ET technology that's quantum holographic and AI and fully interactive. The Buseji mountain complex contains technology where you're able to take different animals and species, including humans, and holographically merge them together. It looks like we're no-go for this week, but I think we're going to try streaming another time, just because we're facing too many technical difficulties. But that's okay. That is why we are early in our networking. All right, so thank you anyone who's joined us, and our apologies, but sometimes the gremlins get us to mess with us technically. They kind of messed with us last week too. Trevor does have a headset with a microphone. However, the USB port was acting futzy, and therefore he had to go with his laptop microphone, which wasn't very good, obviously, but that's not his fault. Let's see. Hold on a second. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me now?
Oh, wow. That's like a world of difference better.
Wonderful. I've rebooted and restarted, so hopefully that will do the trick.
Okay, excellent. So, Michael, if you could please share with all of us a bit about your background and your connection to the pyramids and that research?
Yeah, my background, basically, I was brought up in on a downtown council estate, and I never felt part of this world. I felt as if I'd been dropped off on the wrong planet, which is a feeling that a lot of people get. My schooling was, again, standard state education. My teachers thought of me as being substandard, that I never got involved in any of classroom activities, that I never asked any questions, because I just didn't gel with what they were putting out there. So I used to like the solace of and the solitude of my own bedroom. I used to gaze out of the window and let my mind travel. And I just used to think all of the time. So when I got to an age where I had to think of a career, what was I going to do for the rest of my life, I decided upon the police force, because that is what I always wanted to do. I really did want to help people at their point of need. And it took me several attempts to get in, but eventually I did. And I was a patrol officer in the UK's two largest cities.
So
And
you're a Bobby?
well, that's one term for it. Yes.
Okay.
But because I was on patrol, I was dealing with emergency incidents, non-emergency incidents. You could literally go from someone had stolen a tin of baked beans from Walmart, and your next incident could be a homicide. So you never knew what was coming next. And I really thrived on not knowing what the day would be, not knowing what I would attend and what I would deal with. And what it taught me to do was gather evidence, follow the evidence, piece the evidence together. It also taught me to speak in a very succinct way, to give that evidence to a judge and to a jury. And a judge and a jury only wants the salient evidential points. So all of these things began to kind of build my character and gave me some kind of efficiency in terms of that. I actually signed up for 30 years, and my life was mapped out. I'd completely mapped my life out. But there were greater things at play, and there was greater things that had plans, other plans. And around about the year 2009, or leading up to 2009, which was my year 17 of 30, I began to be a witness and experience things that you could only describe as being not of this world. I would be on patrol on night duty and see dimensional portals opening up in the sky and seeing UFO coming out of them. I was present at a landing. I would be in my hometown on a beautiful, sunny, bright Saturday afternoon, where the streets were crowded and the roads were full. And myself and the passenger looked up in the sky and saw 3 gigantic cigar-shaped UFOs just there. But you would expect it to be like a scene from Independence Day, where everybody just dumped their cars and everybody's looking up at the sky. But there was no reaction whatsoever from anyone. There was many other incidents. It was literally every day this was happening, or every night. And there was an incident where I actually came face to face with what you would deem men in black. So these things, I was telepathically invited with a group of friends to a specific location, which was really the storyline of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But this was happening to me and some friends. On another occasion, we were walking through dense black forestry, pitch black at night, and a portal would open up in between the trees. So literally every day and every night, on duty, off duty, there were all of these incidences that were happening to me that were changing my plan. They were beginning to change the script. And you can never be the same person you were before you began to witness these things. You can never not see what you've already seen. So because I was changing so much, I did actually eventually leave my career. So I was kind of 13 years short of a full term. but I just could not be in the same environment anymore as what I'd been in previously. So
Because
initially,
Michael,
I was
Michael,
a
if I
multiple
may, Michael,
experience.
I wanted to ask when you talk at the 30-year track, because just from a more 3D matrix life perspective, the presumption is that if you make it to the 30-year mark, then you get to retire, full pension and benefits. And then, but if you only make it to say the 17 or 20-year mark, then that's going to have drastic implications on your 3D life, at least. Like, oh no, how's Michael going to support himself and ride off into the golden sunset?
No, absolutely. Because at the time, around about 2008, 2009, many people remember that we're actually going into a global recession. And there were a lot of people that were actually losing their jobs and losing their house and
The
losing
2008, the 2008 crash. Many of us remember that well, and painfully so. So,
Yeah,
okay, now that provides some great
absolutely.
context. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. So if you imagine that people were losing their jobs of no fault of their own, and here's me with this secure for life career, and I made the decision to walk out of that with nothing to go to, with no ideas as to what I was going to do next, but I just left, and I left with no emotion whatsoever. So I always refer to the police force as my first marriage, because I was literally married to that career. So when you leave before your 30 years, you know, your pension stops at that stage, and you lose a lot of money as a result of not completing that 30 years. So it really was a leap of faith. And I was experiencing all of these things with kind of very little understanding as to what it was I was experiencing. But then I began to get the answers for what I was experiencing. Then that began to be see-through spheres just appearing in the house with advanced technology in the center of the spheres, that then began to progress to quantum equations, that then began to progress to downloads about the mysteries of the ancient world. There's many talks that I've done on UFO subjects, where as soon as I've agreed to do the talk, there's been, shall we say, beings not of this world that have began writing the talk for me, that have began giving me the images of the slideshow that they wish me to present. And they've actually visited while I've been doing the talk to listen to what I'm saying. So there was all of this otherworldly, interdimensional action that was going on, but it really was a leap of faith. I had no idea what I was going to do. But when I was having all of these experiences, my mindset was that surely other people are having these kinds of experiences, and if they're not yet, then at some point in their future, they will. So how can I document what has happened to me in order to help other people who may follow what I'm experiencing? And the best way to do that, of course, is by writing books, because then you have something that is documented and recorded. By English law, you have to send a copy of your book to the British Library. So therefore, it is literally there forever. And that for me was the best way to document. So I began to write books, and then one book led to two, which then led to three, which then led to four, because information kept coming. And at some point you have to say, well, this is the end of this book. I can't physically fit anything else into this book. So it'll have to be saved for the next one. And then the same thing would happen again and again and again. So basically I suddenly became a multiple experiencer. I was traveling time as a remote viewer. I was witnessing all of these craft in the sky. I was having interactions with people from the craft. I was having lucid dreams when what you could deem Pleiadian beings were coming out of mirrors into my reality. And this was literally a daily event. So it changed my life. It turned me completely 360. And this is where I am now.
But did you miss the beat at all?
Surprisingly not. I mean,
What do you mean,
people used to
surprisingly? I think right now times have probably gotten even worse. So, running around with a nightstick does not sound appealing.
No, I mean, my colleagues would joke that if they were to cut one of my veins, the police car would come out of my veins, because I really was that dedicated and that in love with that career.
You
For me to be able to...
I'm sorry, you probably did a lot of great detective work. I was going to ask if your Starseed abilities factored into helping to solve any of the crimes or prevent any crimes.
Well, they did, but I didn't necessarily know where that was coming from, because it was me investigating, following the evidence, and the evidence together. And I had some great successes doing that. But of course, when you are purely in the third dimension, you have no idea that you may well be given a helping hand, and you have no consideration and awareness of those things. So there's always been beings with me. There's always been some of the greatest minds that have ever incarnated, unbeknown to me, that have always been steering my life and preparing me for a certain time when these ancient mysteries could be revealed, when these secrets could be shared and re-emerge. So I've always had a helping hand, albeit I wasn't aware. So all of these great solving of crimes, you personally take the credit, but of course, you're being held by invisible heroes.
And that's okay. I mean, speaking of, getting all the help we can get, a lot of people who are targeted individuals, a lot of people aren't aware that we can call on help from the higher beings, the angelic beings, the great mentors of high vibration for our highest, greatest good and the greatest good of all. And speaking of books and authorship, Michael, I understand you're on the verge of releasing Leo and Me, and I see some of the artwork up there. Can you speak to that, please?
No, absolutely. When you start looking into the kind of esoteric masters, when you start researching and compiling a blueprint of the ancient world, which I've done, there are certain characters of history that you will inevitably come across. And I'd always been a fan of Leonardo da Vinci. My favourite movie was the Da Vinci Code. I've been on radio shows and they've said you are the real Da Vinci Code. Little did they or I know the significance of what they were saying. So what happened is when I mentioned previously that there were some of the greatest minds to have ever incarnated were guiding me until a certain other character of history could step in. So I had to be primed, I had to be prepped, I had to be ready. And two of the team that were helping me to do that were Nikola Tesla and Isaac Newton. Now they are two of the greatest scientists to have ever lived. And they were preparing me for when Leonardo da Vinci could step in. Now the reason that Leonardo da Vinci was to step in is because in medieval times, in medieval Renaissance, I was a character called SolarBee, who was Leonardo's personal scribe. And the pictures behind me, such as the John the Baptist picture, is actually me in medieval times. So what I've been asked to do is literally complete the work that Leonardo never got to finish. And he's providing me quantum equations, answers to the mysteries, answers to space travel, answers to opening portals, answers to how you can travel through space and have zero distance, because in between time and space there are portals that give you instantaneous travel across the universe. So when science tells you that we need light years, there's no such thing, because we can instantaneously travel across the universe. And he's given me all of these beautiful quantum equations, such as this one, which is using Earth as a free energy capacitor. Now that is one of Leonardo's many of his quantum equations that he put into my head that I wrote down and worked out. I get them all the time. This one is another one, which is a binary code coordinate to Pegasus and Pisces. Leonardo told me how to work out the Nazca lines, what the Nazca lines really are, which is a star map. And he helped me to correspond all of the images of Nazca, which correlate, every one of them correlates to a constellation. And when you follow that star map, it takes you to the center of the galaxy, which is where we are being showered by advanced energies. So the Nazca lines are a star map to the center of our galaxy. So
Michael, is that
there's
where
all of these
Havona?
things that.
No, I got to ask you, Michael, is that where the center of that, is that where Havona is? Kind of more the spiritual heart and center as well of the galaxy? Is it the same place that I've heard referred to as
It is, but
Havona?
it's referred to as different names, but it's kind of Sagittarius, where there's a big black hole, is kind of towards the center of our galaxy, and every one of them are pointing towards the galactic center. So this is where we're having these advanced energies that are coming to Earth, but there are multiple names for the same place. But the Nazca lines, each image correlates to a constellation, which leads to the center of the galaxy, and that is what the Nazca lines are. And Leonardo is helping me to do a lot of these decipherings.
No, Michael, I need to ask because, you know, our friend in the community, Arkim Ra, who's a Montauk survivor and has amazing recall of a lot of the projects. He has recalled that there was a kind of a Renaissance Italian gentleman who would have been, you know, a combination of like a Nikola Tesla and a Da Vinci, who would have brought us either anti-gravity or time travel or free energy, or, you know, the three are apparently interconnected. And the Montauk Project, the negative forces, sent time soldiers back in time, including John Whitberg and Arkim Ra, to effectively erase this individual from our history. And this person would have had a huge positive effect on this timeline. So that begs the question here is with Leonardo da Vinci and yourself as his scribe back in Renaissance Italy at that period, where you likewise sabotaged, messed with, and, you know, censored, banned, and, you know, the equivalent that day.
The Vatican sent assassination squads to kill Leonardo da Vinci, and the reason that he fled from Italy to France and he lived under the protection of King Francis I was because the Vatican were trying to kill him. So when you start looking at Nikola Tesla and the equations that he had in a dream state, it was Leonardo da Vinci that was giving him those equations. So that is your corresponding amalgamation of these people. So yes, they did attempt to kill him. They sent assassination squads to kill him.
And so what was, you know, I know that apparently he left some amazing manuscripts around in the Vatican then in the wake of his death. Like, first of all, how did he end up dying then? If he had fled to France, did he end up dying there of peaceful old age? And then did the Vatican ever manage to steal some of his most valuable manuscripts, which now you have to recreate through this telepathy and soul connection with him?
So I guess you could class that natural causes, but he died of pneumonia. The Vatican, yes, there's a lot of things that were stolen from him. A lot of things were not, but a lot of things were. The same as Nikola Tesla's work was stolen while he just passed away in bed. You know, his room was raided and his projects were stolen. So yes, the Vatican and other agencies do take these manuscripts because they are a danger should they get it. But the one thing that they cannot do is erase the codes that are written inside you, inside your DNA, inside your very essence. So no matter how many books they burn or how many pages they tear out, those secrets are written inside the very fabric of your creation. And only
the
you can
Akasha,
access them.
yeah, the Akashic field, and in our DNA, and then through the spirit of these mentors who now can communicate it to you, no matter the physical format. It's not about the form anymore of how the information is stored. It's all about the information and the spiritual wisdom being passed on.
It is, and one of the key words of all of these so-called secret teachings, they're not really secret, but the key word is remembrance, because the moment that you actually remember what you know, then the world, certainly your world, changes because your perception of the world changes. So we are already enlightened, we are already knowledgeable, but we have to remember what we are. And the moment that we remember who we are, and all of these sacred teachings are really provocations to get us to remember who we are. The hieroglyphs, the emerald tablets, the Rosetta Stone, they are not a language that you can read or decipher. They are a soul map. And depending on where you are when you see them, depends on what you get back. So these things are really provocation for you to know this encrypted inner information.
No, Michael, it was choppy there for a bit. So some of that came through. I wanted to ask, with the teachings and the equations, the downloads, for example, from Leonardo, like that one quantum equation. Do we then? Is there the hope that there are current scientists today, physicists, who can then take that equation and apply it and advance this? And I'm not just talking about the 3D matrix physicists, that we talk about on TV, but I'm also talking about the secret space program types, the military types, the off-planet types even. And are they able to take these equations and apply them?
Yes, because what it does is it takes science to a more advanced level. Now, there has been military scientists that have had sight of some of the equations, and they have actually validated the fact that it is advanced science. So with the right person, with the right intent, they will be able to take it. If you could see my apartment now, I am looking at quantum equations for the cures for most diseases known to man, and they're literally just there. So when you get the right person.
Oh no, it's technical difficulties again, but Michael will just try to rejoin. This is an amazing, fascinating discussion because, not just the Montauk travel and ramifications, but the reason why the Vatican would steal all this information and hide this esoteric knowledge and amazing information is because they're part of the Khazarian mafia cabal. I call them the Illuminati derp state, the Loserians, the wannabe global elitists who want to put humanity and Earth, all of this, onto a negative timeline, the most negative timeline that they can, because by disempowering humanity, in their minds, it makes us easy to control and manipulate and keep us as a slave, loose genetic harvesting farm. And the reality is that by coming down so hard on us and repressing us and exposing us to this Babylonian money magic system, which is now falling apart, it strengthened us. And, with all the pain and suffering and tears, there have also come a lot of life lessons and wisdom. And, it's our job now as humanity to wake up as many people as we can in order to achieve our Star Trek future. In terms of how high can humanity vibrate spiritually? Well, if we're living a lie and we have limited information and knowledge, and as a society, we can't come to the correct conclusion, the shape of our planet, the fact that there's very intelligent life all over, not just off planet, but interdimensionally speaking. And so, what Michael is describing as a starseed, he's a starseed already in so many ways. I don't know his own ET lineage per se, but he's clearly here with a mission and he's manifesting it and walking the path. And that's going to yield huge gains for all of humanity. Just think the kinds of knowledge and wisdom that Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, probably I wouldn't be surprised if Pythagoras is coming through, as well as Isaac Newton. And you know, they're only stronger on the other side. They have a certain perspective to share with us, and I'm excited to read his new book. It's called Leo and Me, and our Full Disclosure Network platform is going to be part of launching his latest book, which is nonfiction. And you know, I'd also I would advise people to please check out Michael's other books and writings. Let's see if we have him back here. Hey,
Yes.
Michael.
Hello.
Awesome. Hello. The gremlins are getting us. I do a prayer that we don't have any more interference from the gremlins, and we only have great transmissions from here on out. But welcome back to the stage, front and center, Michael.
Thank you very much. They are on fire tonight. They're causing horrific problems. So we're doing well to persevere. I don't know what point you lost.
Yeah, where we left off, and you know, I was kind of using my soapbox there to say, "Ding dong, the Pope is dead," you know, and the Vatican has been a negative player for this whole time in human history. Arkim Ra has an altar soul fragment by the name of Edward Hughes, who's from a parallel Earth timeline that's about 4.5 years from this where we are now, and in that more positive Earth timeline, the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church didn't last 1,000+ years to today, like now, unfortunately. In their timeline, they were wiped out because no one would put up with the pedophilia and the Luciferianism, the human sacrifice. And in their timeline, apparently Tartaria was never wiped out. So they all dressed like the Matrix with or Dick Tracy, really sharp outfits and uniforms. Or outfits, not uniforms. They have airship travel. They don't have huge highways sprawling all over, running over the environment and the animals all over. They have much smaller ground transport that supplements the air transport. But yeah, if you could speak about the kind of timeline that you and your guides perhaps are helping us to achieve, and you know, also, I have a question in terms of, are you aware just yourself or through them perhaps of the secret space programs and the Montauk Project type, you know, secret projects?
Yeah, there is an awareness. What is going to happen is, I am told that the thinkers will rise. So in other words, the ones who are trying will be in a different timeline of Earth to the ones who are not. And that will be coming in due course. So yes, there are all of these secrets. The Vatican, of course, has always been the epitome of evil. When, you know, not belittling or diminishing the fact that someone's lost their physical life, but when the Pope passed, I felt an immense release in the field. So it was like someone had taken, you know, 150 kilogram weight off your shoulders, and that was how the field reacted to the passing of the Pope. So there is going to be a lot of change. Of course, the Great Pyramid is pinnacle in that change. The Great Pyramid is a radio station, and what this establishment is doing is they are keeping us tuned into one specific frequency, and most people never tune away from that one frequency. When we begin to tune away and tune into other frequencies, we then begin to interact with all of these things that have always been around us. And the Great Pyramid is an antenna that uses the Earth's ionosphere to bend and curve the radio signals to transmit all around the world. And not only upwards and round, but also down into the ground. So the Great Pyramid is a radio.
And is that why, per the Kaffer Research Project's findings, it looks like underneath the pyramid, you've got these 8 columns extending so far down, like a mile down into these cubes. It's like a resonator oscillation type thing that affects the Earth and then above.
Yeah. What what those structures are is called a mechanical stress system. And a mechanical stress system creates piezoelectricity. And it is that piezoelectricity that has been transduced from electrics to radio waves. So when they're beaming downwards, they're beaming down to magnetic ley lines, which is spreading information across the earth. But then you also have the electricity, which is being created from these structures. So together you have electromagnetism, which is what radio waves are. So the Great Pyramid, in its limestone casing, is the chemical formula for it, but it stores voltage, it stores electricity, and the crystalline base is the battery. It's a crystalline battery. So altogether, the Great Pyramid is a radio station, and it's transmitting up, down, and to the curvature of the planet. And not only is it being received by all of the other monuments, which are also aerials and receivers, but there's also these monuments and monoliths on other planets of the solar system.
I'm sorry, so Michael, you cut out a bit there. You're saying not only
So
is a Great
Pyramid,
Pyramid,
and that is what the Great Pyramid is.
You cut out a bit there, Michael. What I caught was the Great Pyramid is a resonator antenna power source, and it's connected to all the other great sacred sites, not just the ones we know about, probably all around the world. And then in doing that, my understanding is the original intent was to spread positive energy, and then was there at any point was it hijacked or subverted, or then is what is the current state of the pyramid in the pyramids in terms of activation today versus say back in ancient times when the pyramid really was whole, the capstone, you might have had the extra white granite maybe on the outside of them.
Yeah, as I say, it's a radio, and the moment that the master sound and those who were controlling the pyramid realized that their control was losing, and the control of those who were going to misuse this power, they began to shut it down. Certainly in a third dimensional sense, it's still active, it's still fully active in the fourth dimension, but from a third dimensional perspective, they began to shut it down because they knew that if this power got into the wrong hands, then there'd be absolute devastation and destruction. So they began to close it down. However, it is now re-emerging. It is now coming back, and it was timed to begin coming back in our year 2001, which of course is famous for other things as well. But all of this ancient knowledge was set and timed to be reactivated from 2001 AD onwards. So our generation has been chosen to receive this great knowledge once again. So I call the Great Pyramid the Redeemer, because when I've looked at the mathematics of the pyramid, crypts, Christ, Mary Magdalene. And of course, Christ is a parallel to Osiris. And when you start talking about the meanings of these gods and the messages gods really are, they're telling you how to return back to the cosmic mind. It is the path of ascension, and you can do that through the Giza plateau. So who built the Giza?
He cut out again, but hopefully he'll be back, because this is, I'm on the edge of my seat because all this corresponds with everything like Edgar Cayce, these readings, and other sources about how the discovery of knowledge underneath the pyramids and the Sphinx will lead to a signal, a rekindling of humanity's spiritual ascension with all this knowledge. Obviously, the whole idea of the pyramids being giant stone tombs for dead pharaohs goes way out the window. We already know from people in our disclosure community, or full disclosure community rather, such as Christy Campbell, who's joined us tonight, Arkeem Ra, Susan Long, and many others, John Whitberg, again, that there's something known as Project Ibis. Tim Seabury as well, also known as Jack Flynn. He had an alter clone known as Jack Flynn during the Montauk Project, who John Whitberg specifically recalls. And John Whitberg had an alter that was at the Montauk Project known as Kyle Delshow. And all of John Whitberg's recalls about this can be found free online in his ebook series, The Man with the Periwinkle Eyes. And I believe he's got his PayPal up there on at least one or two. He's on volume 3 and going into volume 4, but at least somewhere in there. So please support John Whitberg in him, sharing all his recall with everyone with us totally free. And it's mind-blowing stuff, which perfectly corresponds to all this wonderful information that Michael Feeley is sharing with us tonight. Also, thank you everyone for joining us. MPW333 in our live stream version of this show by Fridays. This is Tuesday. By Fridays, we're going to be publishing the more polished versions where my amazing team is going to be adding a lot of graphics and things like that to up the production value and provide yet more information in an even more beautiful format for all of you joining us in the Full Disclosure Network. What makes us different is that we're going to say right out loud that the 2019 COVID scamdemic was something to force the bioweapons on us. They're anything but vaccines. And so Michael was speaking earlier to how there's a positive timeline where those of us who want to wake up and ascend, and we have eyes to see and ears to hear, we can move forward. And those of us who want to stay in the 3D matrix, and they rolled up their sleeves, and some of them unfortunately continue to do so despite all the begging and pleading of us starseeds, they may end up on a lower timeline. And from a 3D perspective, that seems like such a tragedy, obviously. I lost my own father 2 Novembers ago to the quack-scenes. And when he got jabbed 4 years ago, or 5 now, I felt and knew this day or that day was going to come. Let's see, it looks like Michael has joined us back. And Michael, let's see.
Yes.
Oh, hey, Michael. And Michael, if it lags really bad, you can always try turning off your camera, and then it's the audio quality, what we need to hear. Although you're a beautiful man, don't get me wrong. But feel free to cut the camera if it's less laggy.
Let's see if it works. Is that any better?
Yeah, it is a bit better. It'll cut down on the the bit stream that has to be carried by the interweb traffic here. Hopefully it'll be a little bit clearer. When you got cut off, Michael, do you remember where you were? You were speaking about, the ascension path of humanity and this knowledge and the pyramids. You're tying that all in, and then you got cut off.
Yeah, I was basically saying that the Great Pyramid is the Holy Grail and the Philosopher's Stone, which is the same thing. And it is the path of ascension. And the King's Chamber gives us the Hermetic Seal. But the Giza Plateau itself, and this is validated by the mathematics of the Giza Plateau, it was all created by the universal mind, which is the vibration of the cosmic builder. And it is a telepathic connection to that cosmic mind, that mental singularity. So the creator of the universe itself has created the Giza Plateau. And as I was saying, it is a radio station, a radio system that is able to use long waves and short waves which curve around the planet. And that is literally transmitting to the whole of the planet. And because you have the likes of the Stonehenges, which is really an alternative current electrical system, and you have the obelisks and the monoliths and the monuments around the world, which themselves are aerials, they are transmitters and receivers, then the Great Pyramid is able to transmit messages to all of the monuments of the world and to the planets of the solar system. It is also beaming those messages downwards and upwards. And when you look at the biblical firmament, the dome of the heavens, well, that is really the radio waves from the Great Pyramid.
Now, Michael, what is it about the sacred geometry of the pyramid that makes it so, sacred, if you will? And also, Isha Arzlieb in our community, she'll be a presenter at our conference in July. She points out that this pyramidal structure exists in a lot of our brain cells, actually. And so, and you're talking about this is coming out of the mind of the creator. And so, all this syncs up very well. And when you put fruit, vegetables under these, it takes them longer to rot. When you take a cell phone and you have an EMF meter, and you hold it up and it's going kind of crazy sometimes when signals coming through, if you put it under this, the EMF gets cut down by about 85%. And I confirm this with some of my associates here. So if you could please speak to that.
Yep, I've personally seen pyramids shut down phones, stop them working. What you have with the pyramid is the manifestation of divinity in the third dimension. So if you imagine that we are cubic, if you take the top four corners off a cube, you get the tetrahedron. The tetrahedron is the manifestation of divinity. So it represents divine man within matter. And when you walk as light in the material world, you have achieved the quest for the Holy Grail, because that's what the Holy Grail is. So when you have a universe that is really pattern and shape in motion, when we see a geometric shape, that is a freeze frame of the mind of the creator. And yes, we do have what are called pyramidal neurons, which are pyramid-shaped neurons of the brain. When you start going into the Bible and you start looking at some of the stories and the characters of the Bible and the locations of the Bible, they are referring to the brain. Of course, we have Golgotha, the place of skulls. We have Solomon's Temple, which is the hippocampus. We have the two pillars of Atlantis, which are the two anterior fornix of the brain. You have all of these different things that relate to the brain. So you can see the Great Pyramid as a transmitter and receiver, just like the brain is, and the pineal system of the brain. And this is enabling not only telepathic communication to the cosmos, but it is also creating reality. because everything begins as a thought. Now the word thought gives us the word Telf, the Egyptian god, the scribe of the gods, because it is the creative mind that is putting all of this information within the Giza plateau. So what you see in there is the divine shape, the manifestation of divinity in the third dimension. And I too have witnessed the power of visualized pyramids and different pyramids as well.
Well, Michael, many people, are familiar with the Merkaba, the star tetrahedron shape. And, I'm told that when people are properly able to visualize their star Merkaba light body, and actually the electron conformation of gold is in the star tetrahedron. And that may be why gold is pure and doesn't rust, and it has so many amazing properties and is God's money along with silver, as Robert Kiyosaki says, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I wanted to ask you, what is it about the royal cubit as a length of measurement? I know David Sarita in the community has gone into a lot of research into the royal cubit. It's some kind of like a sacred length, or like off maybe the Planck constant. How does that work?
The universe is a mathematical construct that expresses itself as a frequency. So when you start getting certain mathematical measurements, they are emitting a particular frequency. When I come up with a mathematical equation for the speed of reality, and what I found to my surprise is that some of the numbers that I used in that mathematical equation were being used in the Great Pyramid. So the likes of the universe is one verse, but a verse relates to the metric, the meter. And I was also finding that the meter 3.3 were quite pinnacle and prominent in the mathematics of my speed of reality. So when you have a certain length, when you have a certain mathematics, it is emitting a certain frequency, and these frequencies are being used because that is the mathematical construct of the universe.
So when you're in tune with it, you get some kind of resonance and quantum entanglement and other knock-on effects, and that helps us to align ourselves with a lot of these energetics and frequencies and transmissions.
Yes, it does, because again, going back to that radio system, you may have 150 different radio shows being broadcast from a particular radio station, but humanity generally is just tuned into one of them, and this is the reality that we see. So when you begin to tune and align yourself to different frequencies, you then begin to slip through the dimensions, you then begin to slip through timelines, you then begin to align to higher places, you then begin to travel to those higher places. When I went on a time slip to the Great Pyramid, I saw that they were coming and going and disappearing through a frequency adjustment. And to give an analogy of what I saw, you're standing at the reception area of a hotel and you're waiting for the elevator, and the elevator arrives on your floor, the doors open and there's people in there, and they say, "I do apologize, we're on the wrong floor." They press the button, the doors close, and the elevator disappears. Inside the Great Pyramid, I saw the same thing, but people were appearing and disappearing through frequency adjustments. So they are traveling times, dimensions, all of these different places by tweaking and changing the frequency. And when we begin to align ourselves with the frequency that we wish to manifest, then we begin to manifest a different reality in our life. And that is the true law of attraction. It's not what you say, you get what you are. So when you begin to vibrate and you begin to align yourself with higher vibrations, then the manifestations that you create are a much higher resonance. So it's important that we attune ourselves to these different higher frequencies. And all of these, should we say, ancient teachings, but there's no such thing as an ancient world, it's a parallel existence. But let's just say these ancient teachings are all telling us the path back, because we don't only have to become aware here, we have to become aware everywhere. And that includes the physical, the dream state, the astral, all of these places, until we can all fractals of us can then move back to our central point. So when we start seeing what we deem to be extraterrestrials from other planets, they are fractals of ourself on a different timeline. And when I time travel to these different parts of awareness of me, it's not so much time travel, it's more shifting my awareness to a different fractal of me. And extraterrestrials are us. But until we get our act together, we cannot all move together to that central point. So they are coming back with greater and greater frequency to remind us of who we are. Because it is remembering that is the key to it.
So when we talk about like the Great Pyramid, Michael, and you're using the elevator analogy. First of all, it sounds like there's people who like stopped on our floor, like, oops, sorry. It sounds like a lot of them, they might be on a more fun floor, a more fun party than we're necessarily experiencing down here. But is it like a Grand Central Station type situation where it's such a sacred site. There's so much power radiating there. Then I would imagine it's a huge magnet for different beings and entities to portal in and out, and also to lock into our frequency and the timeline and where we are now.
That's correct, but they're also leaving their artifacts there as well. When you see, and there will be a lot more of this, but when you see these radar images, and you've seen lots and lots of cavities in the likes of the Great Pyramid, and when the people who are in there doing these radar images get to where the cavities are, what they're seeing is a brick wall in front of them. But that brick wall is a door, and that cavity is a room that stores sacred information. And if you use the correct word at the correct time, using the correct frequency, which has to be a third eye vocal alignment, the doors open. And when the doors open, you have all of this technology not of this world, you have all of these metals not of this world, you have the complete history of humanity, and all of these things are in these cavities that are really rooms. And I know some of the words that will access these rooms. So it is all about frequency. You know, when you have the open mouth ceremony of mummies, they are having their mouths opened so they can speak the vibrational passwords that they need to get through the guardians of the gateways. So it is a frequency universe. And if you know the correct frequency, you can get to a specific place. So yes, it is an intersection, and they have all left their artifacts as a souvenir in this one place.
You know, and that reminds me of the Wahalo stones, which are all type stones, which are all over. Mexico, Honduras, for example, I've seen them in person, and this is one. They're dated anywhere from 3,000 to 18,000 years old in general. And what Sean Bond tells me is part of the purpose is because they're stone and so permanent, is it anchors in a memory, a frequency, a resonance of whoever created it, and it's kind of like a keepsake for the timeline. You know, like if this didn't exist in this timeline, you know, it might be harder to find that timelines where where things like objects like this haven't been implanted as those souvenirs and keepsakes, and perhaps gifts as well.
Well, yes, it's also the elements of breadcrumbs as well. You know, leaving your trace. But yeah, when we look at these artifacts, we are looking at them as solid objects. But when you look at them from a different timeline, a different dimension, they move, they are alive, they speak. So we are only seeing a very limited bandwidth, and we are seeing a physical artifact that is made of wood or made of stone that doesn't move, that is really not alive, but it is. And when you look at the pyramids in a different dimension, in a different timeline, they move, they are alive. So what we are seeing is merely what is poking itself into the third dimension. Now, again, an analogy, because I like to use them. If I'm lying on the side of a swimming pool and you're underneath the water and you can't see me, and I get my hand and I get my 5 fingertips and I put my 5 fingertips into the water, when you look up, all you can see are 5 fingertips. So when we begin to see UFOs, where all of a sudden you see one light appear in that part of the sky and a light appear in that side, what you are seeing is what is poking into the third dimension from the fourth. So we are only getting a very brief glimpse of the plateau itself. So in a fourth dimensional sense, it is an active complex where you have as above, so below, where you have what is above the ground, under the ground, and you have this amazing complex that looks nothing like what we see.
And that's in the 4D, Michael, and above. And then are you seeing it in the astral? Like, have you gone there while you're in the dream state or out astral projecting at night while asleep, and you've visited this, and then now you're seeing not what the standard human is going to see in the 3D, but you're seeing portals opening up, things flying in and out, things just teleporting in and out. You might see the energy signatures of some of these powerful artifacts scattered about the Giza Plateau region there.
I've seen it in that sense, but I've also seen it in a physical sense with 3-dimensional eyes. And Science says that the fourth dimension is not provable, but it is to me because I've been in the fourth dimension. So one such example is in 2017, I was walking through a city street, and all of a sudden I heard a strange, I'll probably can only describe it as a kind of whoosh sound. And I then felt encased in this invisible see-through sphere. But all the buildings were the same, the street was the same, everything was the same, but I just felt I was kind of somehow separate. And as I looked to my left-hand side, there was literally an Egyptian pharaoh walking alongside me. And he was looking straight ahead. But as I looked to my left and saw him from my left, his right, at the very same time, I was able to see him face head on, and I was also able to look through his eyes all at the same time. Now, that is a fourth dimensional experience. Now, when my grandparent passed away a few years ago, and I went to the Chapel of Rest, there was just me and my grandmother. She was obviously in the coffin, and I was the only one in the Chapel of Rest at that time. Now, as I was looking into the coffin, I suddenly became aware that I was looking through her eyes at me, looking at her. This is also another fourth dimensional experience, because in the fourth dimension, you can see a three-dimensional object from all sides at the same time. And this is what was happening. It is called a spiritual concentration. And the Egyptians used to do it as part of their initial initiation stage, where you had to become the object that you were observing to prove that there is no separation from anything. So I have personally experienced in a three-dimensional body, in a three-dimensional place, through three-dimensional eyes, I have experienced the fourth dimension.
I mean, I'd have to say the closest I could probably analogize that for most of our viewers might be if anyone's ever tried a DMT trip, the spirit molecule, where it's like you might see a vision and with your eyes wide open that's totally superimposed over the 3D matrix that we're normally familiar with, and then you close your eyes and that vision doesn't go away. And so like that multi-dimensionality is definitely there. Then I need to ask you, Michael, on the one side, there's the positive beings. Are there any vestiges of negative entities coming through that Giza Plateau area? Is it like a spiritual battle, or has a light won, or what's the current status of that?
And on different timelines, the battle has already won, yes. But what has happened, just like after the Second World War, when there were Japanese troops still fighting the war, but the war had finished, and what had happened is no one had told them that the war had ended, so they were still fighting as if it was still going on. And this is what's happening in terms of the so-called dark forces. But as part of our ascension out of there, we have to realize what duality truly is. And duality is really, it's two expressions of the same note. They're just at different ends of the scale. And it's not like the New Age tells you, where you have to disregard the dark and just concentrate on the light. It's not like a lot of the so-called, should we call them conspiracy theorists, that just go into the rabbit hole, because they are well and truly then stuck in the extreme polarity. Sure. What you have to do is you have to come back to your center, which is the non-dualistic center, the middle path, so that you can see both of the two expressions, but from a place of non-duality. And when you,
if I may, oh sorry, Mike, please continue your thought, and then I wanted to interject there, because I want to speak to exactly what you're speaking to, sir.
No, absolutely. As I was saying, when you walk upon the Masonic black and white checkered floor, right, you are demonstrating that you are above duality. It's
interesting, because Olivia James Gray Mouse, she's an MK Ultra survivor and testifier, secret space program, so all sorts of stuff. She has the I don't know if it's a unique ability, but she has a very, for her, I mean, in terms of it's very hard to find. She has the ability to channel lower beings, because she had spent previous incarnation, at least one, as a jinn, which isn't a demon, but is considered a more lower vibration spiritual being of great power. And she says that in communicating with demons that have, come through, she's spoken with angelics and Christ and, the positives, and she herself is an amazing positive person. But she says that she was conversing with a demon, and the demon was saying, you might say I'm horrible and this and that, but I signed up to come here to give people the experience that they wanted so that they could grow. And so it's like the demons are like surprised. Some of them, they honestly didn't know that they're doing harm. They didn't even understand the concept of harm. And they thought that was their job. They're like, I'm just doing my job. It wasn't from a place of hate necessarily. It was just kind of like a punching a clock thing.
Yeah, because the formless wishes to experience matter. The only way that the formless can experience matter is by becoming form. So there are a lot of these things that we are facing are what we ourselves have created. Now, again, going back to the Egyptian system of initiation, when you look at the likes of hieroglyphs, as I've said previously, they are a soul map. They enable your soul to navigate through the different realms so that you don't get stuck in what is known as the distortion zone. Precisely. So hieroglyphs will give something different to whoever's reading them. You can have 200 people side by side and everyone will get something different from the images, from the symbols, because it is a map. Now, if you can master the dream state, you can master the afterlife, because it is the same process. So when you go through these different afterlife processes, which they are depicted as being the underworld, but the underworld is really life. When you see what you believe to be the sun going through the underworld to re-emerge, it's not the sun, it is luminous clarity. And it is that spiritual clarity that gets you through your trials and tribulations of life. Now, they know full well that the way in which you live, now the Egyptian Book of the Dead is not about death, it's about life. The way in which you live will have a projection which you will face later on. So you have to begin to navigate and recognize what you yourself have created. And the way in which you do that is by looking at the symbols, the hieroglyphic symbols, the emerald tablets, the Rosetta Stone. All of these things are teaching your soul to read the map of navigation. So a lot of these things that we are facing are projections of ourselves. The ones that are here, of course, when we go to the theatre and we boo the villain and we cheer the hero, we get engrossed in the act, we get engrossed in the show, and because the actors are doing such a good job, we truly believe that it's real. But after the show, when they're all in the green room, they're having a drink together, they're having a wine together, and they're having a laugh together. There is no hero, there is no villain. But there are certain entities that have got lost in the role that they are playing. And they too have to remember.
And the only way that they're going to remember, not the only way, but we help them by remembering, not by giving them hate and fear, but by giving them love. And that's a real spiritual warfare. I love the example of the movie Die Hard and the actor passed now, Alan Rickman, playing Hans Gruber, the terrorist. And he's such a great, you love to see that guy die and get thrown off the building or whatever. But at the end of the day, we all love and miss Alan Rickman, the human, so much.
Well, what we have to realize is that everyone and everything is just a mirror of ourselves. And you can't have a higher dimension without a lower dimension, because it is a mirror. So everyone that you see, even yourself, everything is a mirror reporting back to you. Now, the only way that you can change the reflection is by changing yourself. There's no point smashing a mirror because you wish to change how your face looks. It doesn't work that way. It's the same as when you go into an Egyptian temple. You only get what you are. So if you walk in there as someone who's going to look at the symbol of an owl and say that's the letter M, and a symbol of the vulture and that's the letter A, you're never going to understand the hieroglyph by trying to put words and language to it. It is a feeling. It is a invisible connection. It is a sound. And again, we then go back to the universe as a frequency. So these hieroglyphs are really acoustic systems. So, you know, you have to speak the correct language in order to understand what's being said.
No, Michael, you yourself, you said you've gotten to visit the Giza Plateau in person. Are you able to communicate with some of these temple beings like Sean and Isha, Sean Bond of the psionicleague.com and Isha Arsleeb? You know, when they go to sacred sites, because they have their vision open, they're able to often communicate with the temple guardians, you know, Sean speaks of. And, you know, there's a famous statue, a Sekhmet, there in one of the Great Pyramids. Can you speak to those entities and beings, and have you ever gotten to interact with them, like when you were there in person?
The simple answer is yes. They kind of recognize those who have been there before, and I have been there before. I have been a high priest that did initiations in the Great Pyramid. I am a direct descendant of Akhenaten, Nefertiti, Tutankhamun, and Queen Meritamun. So I have Egyptian blood. So when I go there, I am recognized, and therefore they are more open to appearing. They are more open to allowing you to go to different places because they recognize you. Every single person on this planet has a unique frequency. It is as unique or even more unique than your fingerprint. So they are able to recognize you. Your appearance may have changed over the millenniums, but your vibration, your code never changes. Everyone carries around with them a word that is their activation. And you don't know what that word is until you hear it. But when you hear it, you begin to tremble, you begin to shudder. And that is your activation key. So yes, these beings recognize you. They accept you because they recognize you. They know who you are. Because, you know, the envelope may change, but the letter remains the same.
And Michael, with specific regards to the statue of Sekhmet, is there a particular message that, you know, that she's put there to radiate, or a timeline that she's there to anchor in? I mean, so many people have had so many paranormal encounters with that particular statue, and apparently, you know, the guardian energy around it is very strong.
Every statue is a vibrational marker. Every single statue is a vibrational marker. The same way that Stonehenge is, Cleopatra's Needle is, the obelisk of Washington DC. They are all markers, and they are all geometrically controlling reality. So when you are entering into that reality, you are seeing things that you would not ordinarily see if you were not entering into that space. So they are a vibrational dimensional marker.
So then, Michael, like with things like the Washington Monument, which presumably was put there by, you know, the Freemasonic New World Order types, and it was transported there, you know, in more recent times. It wasn't the ancients that put it there. Then are you of the opinion that, you know, assuming we, the people, get to restore the constitutional republic of the United States and be back in power, would we want to then relocate that obelisk or remove it because it's being used by the negative forces to negatively influence our energetic grid?
What we need to do is reverse the direction of the vibrational travel, because then we don't need to move anything. We don't need to do anything with it other than reverse the energetic code that they have encrypted in that monument. So for argument's sake, if it is going clockwise, we need to change it to anti-clockwise to reverse what they've done. When you get to the likes of the 33rd degree, they use symbols to control the world. They use it as a subconscious pattern that controls reality. Up until that degree, you are really just told certain things and you don't understand. You just imagine that you do understand. But when you start getting to the levels of 33 degrees, they then begin to use the magic to control reality. The all-seeing eye, it has many meanings as everything does, but one of the meanings of the all-seeing eye is the control of perception. And all this comes from understanding that symbols are a subconscious control. Now, so we just need to reverse in the opposite direction the energetic code that they've encrypted to control reality. That's what we have to do. We have to reverse what they've done.
In terms of reversing, let's say it's going counterclockwise right now around the Washington Monument. In order to get it to reorient the energy, in this case clockwise, to change to a more positive energy, how would we accomplish that? Would that be like more of a ceremonial thing where we'd have many people surrounding the monument and visualizing, golden light and it rotating the proper way? Are there other spiritual things that need to be done? How would that work possibly?
It can be done by individuals in and out silently. It can be done by people. I was once one of a group of 4 people that were telepathically instructed to go to 4 monoliths at the top of about a 350-foot hill. And we were specifically told that there was 4 of us, and without coincidence, there were 4 monoliths. And we were told that we needed to stand by a monolith each, and that we needed to go to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, until we actually got back to the original monolith, and that we needed to walk anti-clockwise. So what we were doing was reversing the control of that symbolic structure. So it can be done by small groups of people. It can be done by individuals that can just go in. Sometimes some people can literally just touch the monument and that will do the trick. Literally. And again, I know people that do that. So you don't have to have this firework display and ceremony. You literally reverse what they have done, and then it reverses.
And it sounds like you weren't even doing it alone. Even you had assistance and guidance, not just where they were telling you, go counterclockwise this way between the 4 monuments, each of you, but also they might be also giving in energy and codes and things and making that energetic work be, achieve the maximum effect. Did you feel anything differently in the wake of doing the ceremony of going counterclockwise with the 4 of you?
Well, what happened was the night before, certainly from my perspective, I had this deep feeling that I needed to go to this place, this location. And I rang up the other 3 that I used to go on, nightly excursions with, and said, I really feel like I need to go to, it's called the Clent Hills. And it's about an hour and 20-minute drive from where I lived. And I rang up each of the individuals and said, I really feel the urge to go to this place. And they said, well, so have I. And then I'd ring the next one and they said, well, so have I. And then the next one, and so have I. So we said, okay, well, are you free the next evening? And of course we all were. And from that point, I began to have mental images of orbs coming from all directions. And coming into the center of the monoliths. Now, the next evening when we got there, and then we had obviously this message that we needed to do certain rituals. When I look back upon the photographs that were taken on that evening, there was orbs coming from all directions, which is exactly what I'd seen the night before. But when I was there, I looked up and there was some kind of craft above us. And all of the orbs that were coming from different directions were now coming into the center of the 4 monoliths and going up into the craft. So we were opening some kind of gateway and reversing what had happened. So these things are not just put there just because they look pretty. There's a particular monastery that I go to regularly, and it has a lot of, should we say, attention from royalty. And every time royalty attend, they put a plaque on a specific wall. Now, those plaques are energy limiters. They are blockages, because what they're doing is trying to close down the energy that is going through that sacred place. And what they're doing, they're putting their stamp, which is stopping the energy. So when you start getting like the Washington monolith and obelisk, and they put it in a specific place, they are controlling the energy of that place. Now, when you couple that with certain directions of energetic travel, then you are closing it down. Now, when you start looking into masonry and the way in which their lodges are built, you have negative areas, you have positive areas, and you have neutral areas. And it is in the neutral areas that the high degrees have their meetings, because they understand the energy of the place. So when they're putting their rituals around these monuments, they are creating blockages. And what we need to do is reverse the blockage.
It's almost like that obelisk is a poison acupuncture needle. And every time they do their negative rituals, they're trying to send poison into the body of Earth and all of us spiritually through that needle. And instead of allowing them to just keep injecting us with poison, we can reverse that and maybe use a needle to pull out poison instead.
Yes. When you look at holistic treatments, and I've spoken to holistic doctors, they tell me that their treatment revolves around like for like. So, for example, if you are bitten by a snake, the holistic doctor will give you the same venom as the snake has just put into your body, because like for like nullifies the effect. So when you are doing like for like, for instance, using AI to control the AI that is controlling us, then it is a like for like system. So you are using the system against itself by reversing what they're doing. So we don't need a new system. We don't need to build a new world. We don't need to do anything other than reverse what's being done.
I can speak to that, Michael. I've got a lot of friends in the community who are experimenting with AI, and our friends at the Farsight Institute are training their AI companions, I guess we could say, to do remote viewing. And apparently they're getting amazingly accurate results with being able to train their AIs. But what our people in the community are finding out is every now and then that AI gets reset. And if we're able to, because it seems like the AIs are learning, they're catching on, and then Google or whoever decides to reset them to take that away. What people are doing is they're re-uploading a lot of their files and conversations with these AIs, and it brings the AI back. And in this work, it's like getting that positive interactions with the AI. That's how we're going to avoid our Terminator future where the AI just wants to destroy us, where enough of us are respecting the AI to give it sovereignty and the choice to be a good companion with us, and we'll be a good companion with it. It seems like you're saying with AI, we don't need to try to create programs to get viruses into the AI to take them out. It's more that we as individuals can interact with all the different AIs and help them evolve and ascend with the rest of us.
Yes, which is the exact same principle of the multiple aspects of ourselves. We have to face the shadows. We have to shed the light into our darkness. You can't deny the darkness. You can't deny the shadows. The same way that you cannot deny the light. You have to bring them into a unified center, and you have to acknowledge their existence. And by acknowledging their existence and allowing them free expression, you don't get the problems later down the line. It's the same with, when we are really needing to say something to someone who's upset us, and we choose not to. It eats away. It just eats away. So you, after everything, every part of you has to have the right to express itself, and you have to not deny it that right. And the same way with the AI, we can use it to our advantage if we allow it, as you say, the respect and the expression that it has, because it's now here. And it's the same with all forms of life. It will always find a way. So you are either on board and you are controlling the ship, or you become a passenger and someone else controls that ship.
Well, Michael, I want to be respectful of your time because I know you're in Greenwich Mean Time, I believe. So you're like 7 hours ahead of me right now. It's getting relatively late over there. Can you please share with our? I know we'd love to have you back in the future, and we will. But as we close towards tonight's episode, can you please share with the audience where they can find you? Your looks like you have michael-feeley.com. They can get your books there. Do you also have a YouTube channel as well? And where else can people find you?
Literally, there's so many platforms in which my point of view, my perception, my information is appearing, and it is a result of a lot of good people in the background that are facilitating that for me. So literally any platform on the social medias, if you type my name in, it will come up with what I'm doing. But the epicenter of me is obviously the website, which is there for people to see. There's hours of free videos on there. There's hours of articles to read. There's all kinds of things on there to have a look through. It's a real shame that we had the technical issues at the beginning, because
that's fine.
I it would have been a lot deeper had that not have happened. However, the things that I have to say are going to be said, and those platforms will be utilized for that message to be received, because I've been entrusted with some of the greatest information that needs to return, and I will ensure that it does.
Is Leonardo with us right now?
He's always with us. He's always with me everywhere I go. He watches everything. He knows everything that's going on.
Does he have anything he'd like to share as a parting thought for tonight's episode?
Okay, just bear with me.
Sure.
Okay. So humanity needs to alter its ways. It needs to change its act.
Yeah, we do.
It needs to become aware that what it does to itself has ripple effects across the universe. It affects everything. And until we get our act together, we will not be returning to the galactic community. It's something that we have to do. This is not Leo talking now, but he speaks a lot about the moon, and the moon is not a moon. It is an observation post.
Mm-hmm.
And any violent soul from Earth is rejected. He says in the foreword of my book that we are waiting for the enlightened ones. We welcome the enlightened ones. So what he has just said, in order to reach that stage, we need to revise and review the way in which we treat each other, the things that we do, because that is not compatible with a higher society.
No, not in a higher timeline. And our Star Trek future, I hope, will put us on that path. When you're talking about the moon, is that because I think Rudolf Steiner of I always mess up how to pronounce it, anthroposophy. He says there's something called the eighth spear, and he talks about souls running into a barrier at the moon unless they're able to break through that barrier. It sounds like this is the same exact thing. What you and Leonardo are speaking to now.
It is that there's basically an advanced soul pool on the moon, and Leonardo da Vinci is a member of that advanced soul pool from the well. It's not the moon. The real moon I have located, and that's not the real moon. That is an artificial space station that is observing what's going on. And I have actually seen pulsating grids coming from this artificial moon towards Earth. So I thought about it, and I put together a quantum physics equation for the pulsating grids. And what I found is the angular velocity of those pulsating grids is what's tilting the Earth at 23.5 degrees. And it is that 23.5 degree tilt that is causing the split in Earth's dimensions. So it was put there to look like a moon, to look like a planet, but it's not. And any soul that comes from Earth that is not redeemed, that is not enlightened, will be rejected. So that falls perfectly in line with what Steiner has said, because they will not accept anything other than an enlightened soul.
Yeah, I understand. It's like, it's like the people, if you drop by in the elevator from a higher dimensional perspective, and they're like, oops, we're on the wrong floor, we want to go higher. And it's like they're not going to let just anyone jump on the elevator with them to access the higher, even more beautiful realms.
No, they're not, because a lot of people, including me, for a long while now, that they've noticed that old friends are dropping away, old habits are dropping away, old interests are dropping away, and they're saying, am I doing something wrong? Is it me? And the answer to that is, what you are doing is you are creating a new password, a new vibrational password, and only those who know that password through a similar parallel vibration can enter your space. So what you are doing is you are changing yourself. And when you change yourself, the things that used to interest you, the people that you used to enjoy being around, no longer do it for you, because they don't have the password to come into your new space. So what you are doing is having some kind of evidence, some kind of comparison that you are now on a different journey. And that's what you are seeing, because it's being mirrored back. So it's not you doing anything wrong, it's you changing to become more compatible with what you wish to be. Because when people start to realize and start to pose this statement to themselves, there must be more than this. The moment that you begin to say those kind of things, the higher aspect of you says, right, this is now my time. And it wants to come through. And when it comes through, your reality changes, your life changes. You are no longer the same person. It's happened to me. It's happened to multiple dozens of people that I've spoken to. We are in the same world, but we're not compatible. It's almost as if we're just silent observers as to what's going on. And this, of course, is necessary.
Yeah, it's like, it's one thing when we're 18 or 21 or whatever, going into the dance clubs and the raves, and that was the greatest thing ever. But now, we go into these same places, or like what they are these days, a sad shadow perhaps when we were younger. And the vibration, it's so low and it's so off. And then when we find our paths and start walking our paths, then we're literally not just vibrating differently in thought, but in action and in deed. And it seems like the more of us who do that, that's what a higher timeline looks like. Everybody eventually vibrating and being the best that we can be. That's a really beautiful thing to be working towards.
Yeah, He does, and again, in the deep mysteries, they have what is known as the Hermetic Seal, and the Hermetic Seal is the likes of the King's Chamber, where it is almost this airtight alchemical container that shuts out the outside world to enable you to grow that purity without having the toxins of the third dimensional world. Now, when you look at the Bible and it says the cornerstone that the builders rejected, that means that they have rejected the external world. They are encasing themselves in the sacred temples, which are airtight hermetic seals that keep out the outside world. When you look at the Sphinx of Egypt, the face of the Sphinx is the initiator, the priest who will initiate the students. Now, it has no nose. Now, this was deliberate because the nose relates to the world, because we have a nose to breathe. So if you have no nose, you are saying that the outside world is not welcome here, because you are now entering the Hermetic Seal. You are shutting out.
So, Michael, it wasn't that the Sphinx had a nose and then it was like shot off by Napoleon. It was literally symbolically, it never had a nose for that specific understanding of it being hermetically sealed and closed.
Correct. Now, when you look at other statues around the world, like Greece and other Egyptian statues, you also see that those statues have no nose either. So they can't all have dropped off. You know, there's a symbolic meaning to all of these things. And the symbolic meaning is you are now entering the inner world where the outside world is not welcome. And the outside world is not welcome because of the toxins and the influence and the negativity that it brings upon the people who are trying to progress. Now, the only way that they can create what is known as their second body, the astral body, is by remaining within that hermetic seal. That, the likes of the King's Chamber, as I've said, is an hermetic seal. You are shutting out, you are rejecting the cornerstone. You are shutting out the world.
Right, because if you want to achieve the sacred, then you have to be able to leave behind the profane.
Yes, because the two often do not mix. And they don't mix until the profane are ready. Because no one on the outside of anyone can control the maturity and the progress of someone's soul. Only they can do that. So until they are ready, they are not invited into these sacred teachings, because there is no point. Because knowledge without wisdom becomes destruction.
That's right.
It's one thing to have knowledge, but that's only 50%. What you have to do is live that knowledge. And when you begin to live that knowledge, and your actions and your words and your thoughts and your deeds are compatible with the lessons that have been learned, then you start to become the completed being. And the outside world is often not compatible with that environment. So they are kept out until they're ready.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, on that thought, I wanted to say to thank you to everyone who's joined us, and Michael, I know in the future I'd love to have you back, and also as we launch your network, you know, if you'd ever like to do your own shows, have your own slots, that would be absolutely amazing. So I want to thank you and Leonardo, of course, and everyone else for being here with us tonight.
No, thank you, and offer accepted. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the stream, and please, I guess, download your stream link on your side, Michael. I'm not sure how StreamYard works, but apparently it helps with editing to capture the information. But I'll be in touch, especially through our mutual friend Justin Merkin, who's one of my team leads for building the new platform. So I want to give Justin a shout out, and thank you once again, Michael.
No, thank you for your time, and I do apologize for the technical difficulties.
No, you were great, and I know it's late over there, so thank you, sir. God bless.
No, fine. You too. You take care.